Okay, a little bit of a small turnout. We have to compete with the Flutter leadership panel, which is very sad for me because I would also like to see what they have to say. But thank you for coming anyway. I'm Leigha. I'm the head of product at FlutterFlow, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what FlutterFlow is and some of our recent product announcements. So I guess how many of you have used FlutterFlow before? Nice. How many of you have heard of FlutterFlow? Awesome. Okay, so hopefully I don't need to tell you too much about what FlutterFlow is, but for those who haven't tried it, when you log into the platform, you see something like this. So FlutterFlow is a visual development platform for building Flutter apps. You can add widgets to your widget tree of a page or a component on the left-hand side. You can drop down to custom code as needed, so you have the flexibility of writing code with the ease of use of a visual platform. You can see real-time previews as you're developing, and you can configure properties of your widgets over on the right-hand side. And then when you're ready to test or run your app, you can run it in web, or you can connect to a wireless device or run it on a simulator. So you have everything you need to build a great, powerful Flutter app. And since I'm assuming most of you are developers, since this is a development conference, I wanted to point out a couple of the value propositions we think FlutterFlow offers. So first off, we have this visual interface. And our hope is that if you're working in a visual interface for creating UI, that you're going to be much faster. Next, we take care of a lot of the boilerplate code for you. So we try to anticipate things that you might want to do when you're building a Flutter app, and just take care of it for you by default. Finally, we make it really easy to connect to your backend in just a couple of clicks, so I can easily connect to an API endpoint or a Firebase project or another backend. And of course, you always own your code when you're working in FlutterFlow. So you can export your code or download it using the CLI whenever you want to. We're not trying to lock you into the platform. So we had our development conference a couple days ago, and we just announced some of these metrics. Yeah, literally 2 days ago. It was really fun. We now have 1.6 million users using FlutterFlow. And when I talk to a lot of developers, they say, oh, I already know how to write Flutter code. I don't need to use FlutterFlow. But actually, more than half of these users are software developers. And most of them have Flutter development experience before they even come into FlutterFlow. Just in the past year alone, we've seen 15,000 apps be deployed from FlutterFlow. So that's using our integration with CodeMagic to deploy straight to the app stores. Yeah. And FlutterFlow is used at some of the biggest companies in the world. It's really impressive. We have Wendy's, which is building apps to manage their AI drive-through experiences using FlutterFlow. And we have some of the largest banks in the world, including Axis Bank, which is based out of India, and their app that they've built with FlutterFlow has more than 50 million downloads and 13 million active monthly users. Really? Oh, that's awesome. I love it. We recently launched some new community programs. So we have our FlutterFlow developer groups, which is a great way to get accustomed to other people developing in FlutterFlow or learn a little bit about the tool. So you can scan this QR code if you want to learn more. Okay, so I mentioned that we just had our FlutterFlow developer conference 2 days ago, and we launched FlutterFlow 5.0, or rather we announced it, and it's launching in just a couple of days. So I want to use most of today to talk about some of the new features. This is supposed to be a lightning talk, so it's like 15 minutes. I'm going to run through these very quickly, but if you have time, you should take a look at our keynote, which is on our website, and you can see all the live demos and get access to try out the features when they're launched next week. Okay, so one of the first things we talked about is just expanding the types of apps that you can build in FlutterFlow. We wanted to make sure you can build really dynamic and expressive interactive user interfaces. So this is one of the demos that we showed where you can use your finger to kind of scroll or pan. So to make this possible, we just announced the launch of 50 plus new action triggers. And for those who haven't used FlutterFlow, an action trigger is basically some type of event, and you can visually create the logic that you want to execute in response to an event. So we previously had events like on tap or on data change, but now we've added more than 50 new events, and these are mostly focused on gesture detection. So things like horizontal drag, vertical drag, pan, zoom in, swipe, all those sorts of things. And when you're building in FlutterFlow, you get access to the data that corresponds with that event. So I can see that when I'm grabbing my horizontal drag update, I can grab the global position that that update happened at, the local position within a widget, so those are the coordinates, or the delta, like how much it's changed on both the X and the Y axis. But people are building both mobile and web apps in FlutterFlow, so we know that things like pan and zoom aren't the only way that people can interact with your app. So we also gave users the ability to create shortcut keys. So a new action trigger where you just look for your users to press some key on their keyboard. And I don't know if anyone has tried to actually do this in Flutter, just like writing code. It's really hard. It's really hard to figure out how to manage focus nodes and do all that sort of stuff. So these are the kinds of things that become much easier when you're using FlutterFlow. Okay, so another feature that we announced at FFDC was something called Widget Builder as a parameter. So when you're working in FlutterFlow, you have the ability to create pages, or you can create something called components. And components are just like little bits of UI. In the generated code, they're actually their own widget classes. And here's an example of a component we created for one of the demos. So I have this tile right here. And you can see I'm using the same component 2 separate times. So what we launched with this widget builder as a parameter is when I create my component, I see my widget tree over here, and I can see the parameters or inputs that are going to be sent into this component. So now we have this new data type for component parameters called widget builder. Basically, this allows you to pass in different widgets to be used as part of the widget tree in your component. So you can see I have some background widgets, and I have my icon widget that's overlaid in the top right here. And then whatever widget is passed into this component is just going to show up right here on my widget tree. So I'll show a quick example of what this looks like. I can select a different widget to be used as that widget builder, and then we can see it change. So basically, this allows me to try to adhere to the do not repeat yourself principle when building in FlutterFlow. I can create components and then just pass widgets into them to be used for dynamic content. And just to give you a quick peek, in the generated code, I mentioned that components just become their own widgets. So this is a smart device tile rectangle widget. And you can see that the parameters for this widget, we now do have a widget builder. It's just going to be a function that returns a widget. Cool. So that was widget builder as a parameter. Another feature that we talked about was development environments. So if you've used flavors in Flutter, it's a very similar concept. Depending on where you're at in your development cycle, whether you're developing a new feature, testing a new feature, or pushing something to production, you might want to point to a different database, you might want to use different assets, or you might even want to display something different on your screen. So development environments in Flutter allow you, or FlutterFlow, allow you to do this. We have this new page called Dev Environments, and I can create new environments. So here, I created one called Dev. Then within these environments, I can create different environment values or variables. So I created one for API URL, and I just changed its value for the dev and production environments. So dev, I can see I'm pointing to some dev URL. If I wanted to work in production, I would go over here and change this to a different URL to point to my prod API. And then when I'm ready to test this out, I can just change my development environment in the top left-hand corner and run or download the code, and you'll see it point to the different API depending on what environment I've selected. When you have your environment values set up, you can use them throughout the platform. So one example we gave was using it when you define an API endpoint. I mentioned before how it's really easy to connect to backends in FlutterFlow. We have this nice kind of like Postman-esque screen where I can add things like headers, query parameters, my API URL. And these can all be bound to those environment variables I set. So I just say, hey, point to this URL and use whatever value is set in this API URL, which is an environment value. So we know it's going to change based on whatever environment is selected. Okay, so that was dev environments. Now we want to talk a little bit about updates to branching. Last year, we actually launched branching inside of FlutterFlow. So if I'm in a FlutterFlow project, which is basically an app or a single repository, I can create a new branch so I'm working on in isolation, and I'm not affecting what other people on my team are doing. So we already have branching, but we added a new feature, commits. Most of you are developers, so I don't need to explain to you what a commit is, but one thing I'm really proud of is this really nice user interface inside of FlutterFlow. So I can make a change, give it a name, and then I come over here and look at my branch history. I can search through the different commits, and I can view the branch at that commit and see the exact changes that are part of that commit in a visual way. So I can see previously my icon counter had this purple outline to it, and then after the commit was applied, it has this green outline. All right, like I said, we're moving quickly through these features. That was branching, that was an update that added commits. And another huge thing we launched at FFDC was the introduction of libraries. And you can think of libraries as a Dart package or a Flutter package that was created all inside of FlutterFlow. So when I'm in a FlutterFlow project, I can create things like components, which I just talked about, or API endpoints, which I just showed. We can also create new data types like structs or enums. You can add constants, and you can create state variables. And now all of these can be shared not only within your project, but across multiple projects. So in this new page, I can publish my project as a library. And you can see I can give it a version number, I can add a description, and then I see my publish history. And each one of these versions is tied to a specific commit, so it's just a specific snapshot of the project at that point in time. And once I publish my project as a library, I can import it into other projects and then use those resources. So I can have a single project that has maybe some centralized design system or component library, and then use that in as many projects as I want to. So here you can see I've added some library, and you can see the type of assets that are included here. Like I have some state variables, some enums, different data types, and UI components. And of course, I'm importing a specific version, so I can upgrade that when a new version is available. And I forgot to put a screenshot in here, but the generated code is actually really cool because it does generate this library as a local package that then is imported with a specific version in your pub spec. So like I was saying before, all the sorts of resources that you create in a FlutterFlow project can be imported through libraries, and then you have some great version control associated with it. And we're really excited about libraries, not just for internal use, but also because it's the first step in building like a true integration or plugin framework for FlutterFlow. So one of our partners, Adapty, they allow you to manage your subscriptions and revenue for your mobile app through their service. So they work mostly through just like a Dart SDK that they've created where you can make calls like make purchase or something like that, or get subscription options. So what they were able to do is create a FlutterFlow project. And like I was saying before, not only do you have the option to build visually, but you can also drop down to code as necessary. So they just created all these different functions or actions, and they mostly wrap around their existing Dart package. So you can, or I guess I've cut it off, but you can import custom pub dependencies, and then they've created these different structs or data types that are both passed in and returned from their functions. And what's really cool is they've published it as a library, so now anyone can come in and import their library into their project and just use the UI to really quickly just make a call to Adapty to like get a paywall or make a purchase. And for those who don't know, we already have a great marketplace, the FlutterFlow marketplace, where you can monetize your content, you can create sample apps or design systems. And now we're bringing libraries to the marketplace so anyone can build different integrations or design systems and be able to have a platform to monetize them in the community. Okay, so that was all about libraries and integrations. One other thing we were super excited about was a VS Code extension. I just showed how you can add custom code into your FlutterFlow project, and we had a web-based editor which was getting the job done, but left some things to be desired. So we're really excited now to give everyone the ability to just see their entire code base in VS Code. So all the generated code that FlutterFlow creates for you based on what you do visually, alongside the custom code that you create to run within the app. So when you're in VS Code, you can specify your FlutterFlow project and your API key, and then you can just pull anything down from FlutterFlow, make changes to your custom code, and then push it back up so that it's saved in the FlutterFlow project itself. So this, of course, has a ton of benefits. You get to use the existing like Flutter and Dart extensions. You can use Copilot in VS Code. I think this also works with Cursor because Cursor is a fork of VS Code. So you have all that sort of tooling with the ability to still work in collaboration with what you're doing in FlutterFlow's visual environment. Okay. But really the most exciting thing about FFDC, I think, was our demo of the FlutterFlow AI tooling that we've created. So there's a couple of new features. Now we already had page gen where you could generate a FlutterFlow page from a prompt or generate a component from a prompt, but we added a couple of new features. The first one was sketch to component, where you literally can take an Apple Pencil, sketch what you want it to be, and FlutterFlow will use your sketch to generate a component for you. There's also something called page autocomplete. So I can start building my page, and if my page has a description of what it should be, FlutterFlow will start to autocomplete it as I'm typing, which is awesome. And my favorite is a magic cursor. So this allows you to generate things in your FlutterFlow project from a prompt, and this can be anything. This can be like logic, this can be custom functions, this can be setting variables, this can be UI. Basically anything that you can do in FlutterFlow, Magic Cursor can help you do. But you get the context of what you're actually working on. So I can point to a button or I can point to a column on my page, and then I can give FlutterFlow a prompt of what I want it to help me build in that area of my app. I felt like I couldn't do it justice because the Wi-Fi in here isn't that great, so I'm not going to do any live demos, but on ffdc.io you can watch the entire recording from Tuesday where you see our live demos. We're also going to be launching some of these features on Tuesday, and you can try FlutterFlow for free. You can even come over to our booth, which is the very first one when you walk in, and we can give you some demos of these features and show you how to use them. So, yeah. That's it on FlutterFlow, but we have one more quick announcement. At FFDC, we decided to pledge to donate $1 million for helping open source Flutter projects and really try to help bolster the Flutter ecosystem. So Puff, who many of you might know from Firebase, he recently joined FlutterFlow, and I will be leading the charge on this, and our goal is to help sponsor Dart packages that are widely used throughout the Flutter community so we can add new features and keep them going. So if you have ideas about packages that should be sponsored or ways you would like to see this money used, please feel free to come talk with us. But yeah. I'm not exactly sure how we're doing on time. Good. Can we take questions? Cool. All right. Anyone have any questions? Go for it.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering, to be honest, in terms of future, I don't know, is it documentation, onboarding, training, strategy? Because I love FlutterFlow, but I feel like it's hard to pitch. Like it's hard to help people understand who the intended recipients are. Like if people say, is it a developer tool or a tool for artists? The answer is, well, yes, you know, right? So being able to see more persona-specific training and documentation, I guess it's not really a question, but I'd be pretty
Yeah.
to consider that.
Oh no, that's great to hear. We've actually been making a lot of changes recently. Pooja, who's right here, just recently basically redid our entire documentation and is starting to create like docs that are more purpose-built for developers that go more into the code side and what it looks like to look at the generated code. But we also just launched a new version of our website, and I'm not sure if this has it right now, but over the next couple of weeks, we'll be creating pages that are specific for like developers or designers and things like that, where we hope to kind of have the messaging more targeted for those users. So hopefully what you need will be gradually rolling out.
Yeah, because even like the idea of competing with Figma, if you can get people to start and then switch, I think a lot of companies would want to do that. They want to start with Figma and the prototype, the FlutterFlow in the prototype space, and then go.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thanks for coming here, even though the wonderful leadership panel is going on. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can come find us at the FlutterFlow booth.